Hello and welcome to the News9 Plus show on the world's first news and current affairs OTT platform, News9 Plus. Let me just start by reading out some statistics. On the 25th of January 2005, more than 340 devotees trampled to death at Mandhar Devi Temple in Maharashtra. On the 3rd of August 2008, 162 people dead in a stampede triggered by rumors of rock slides at Naina Devi Temple in Bilaspur, Himachal Pradesh. Then on the 30th of September 2008, nearly 250 devotees killed and over 60 injured in a stampede triggered by rumors of a bomb going off at a temple in Jodhpur. On the 13th of October 2013, 115 people killed and over 100 injured in a stampede at a temple in Madhya Pradesh. Now, India has had a long history of deadly stampedes at religious gatherings over the years. Why does this happen? Joining me to discuss this are Mr. A.K. Jain, former DGP, Uttar Pradesh Police, Major General V.K. Datta, who was formerly with the NDMA, National Disaster Management Authority, and my colleague Ashok Bagaria in the studio here with me. Gentlemen, welcome to the News9 Plus show. DGP, Mr. Jain, I want to start by asking you this. We've seen what happened in Hathras. A lot of the responsibility, the blame has been put on the district authorities, the district administration. What in your mind are the 5 things that the local administration ought to have done to prevent this horror from unfolding?
First of all, they should have gathered intelligence on this man, on so-called God man. He has history of taking permission for 50 during COVID and collected thousands and thousands. He has been doing it for a very long time. Accordingly, arrangements should have been made. His men had applied for a permission of 80,000 people. There was very long jam on GT road. And for several kilometers, buses, private cars were parked. In fact, there was a jam was there for quite some time, for quite a few hours. And police had to resort to force also to clear it. Permission should not have been given so very close to GT road. The ground in which permission was given was wet because of rains. It's a perfect ground for stampede. Proper intelligence collection should have been there. And it should have been reported to the authorities, to SDM, DM, SP, SHO, Sikandara Rao, that lakhs of people have collected there. Conditions should have been imposed for posting an ambulance, doctor, water tankers, toilets, separate entry, separate exit, sufficient place for parking of vehicles. All this was not ensured because the exit and entry were the same. And at the last moment, vehicles of Baba, so-called Baba, were brought in, and his sevadars were pushing people all around to make way for the fleet. This also led to stampede. Proper SOPs are required for future, and it should be mandatory for all district administrations, police administrations to follow it. After Judicial Commission report, I think there will be recommendations.
Right.
There'll be orders on the part of state government from Chief Minister's side, and they should be followed.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Jain, for those 5 big failings that the local administration failed to put into effect in Hathras, leading to this horrific tragedy. DGP Vikram Singh, former DGP Uttar Pradesh Police, joins us now. Mr. Singh, welcome to the News9 Plus show. Just, your colleague, Mr. Jain, was just telling us about the 5 things that the local administration did not do, which led to this horrific tragedy in Hathras. What do you think should be the new SOPs that should evolve as a result of this? I'm fully aware of the fact that we conduct the Kumbh Mela very well. Nobody dies in a Kumbh Mela where literally lakhs of people converge, but yet you have these small, small religious gatherings across the country where you have, over the years, over 2,000 people have died in the last decade or so. What are the SOPs you think that need to be put into motion now after Hathras?
My illustrious colleague, Arvind Jain, has mentioned very lucidly the 5 points. I could add another 5. In fact, you really have to try very hard to bungle up like this in this manner. Rome wasn't built in a day, it certainly was demolished in a day. We've had successful Kumbh, Kawad Mela, Assembly, Parliament elections, and Muharrams and all other processions. But in a small get-together like this, we bungled up so badly. We did not take heed of the advanced intelligence of the fact that this man is a serial offender and has been booked under overbooking of the field.
Right.
The current plot of land where this congregation was supposed to happen is just next to a national highway, which is just not the right place to have it. That in short, traffic jams. Well, the traffic jams with the 250,000 people don't descend from heaven. It takes about 8 hours to have a collection of 250,000. What was the control room doing? What was the advanced intelligence and the local intelligence unit doing? What were the local police doing? Obviously, they probably thought some guardian angel would come and take up the arrangements. In fact, which was the case. The Sevadar said that you please be out the outer perimeter. We will be in charge of the inner security. This is absolutely absurd. All the security is the work and the responsibility of the police, and no Sevadars and no self-styled security people and bouncers. And the way in manner in which it was bungled, that there were no watchtowers, internal security scheme, which is a part of every district in the country, the security schemes, that was never rehearsed, barricades not in position, first aid ambulances not there, and those who were supposed to be the resources and the backup and the special operations group, which are supposed to be in the outer cordon of all such arrangements where there are more than 25,000 people. I fail to understand why these SOPs, these are very basic and rudimentary questions. It is again like saying that somebody topping the MSc but failing in class 2 examination. It is as absurd as that.
Right, absolutely,
and to take taking people on face value, give an application of 80,000, knowing fully well that the Baba is unreliable, and he is known to be unreliable in the past also.
Right.
It was just to see that the cost of the police is not recovered from them, because in such matters, the cost of the police deployment is taken from the organizers, because they get compensated by the Hathras and the gift from the people. Therefore, the police. Whereas if they had billed them for 250,000, it would have been much more. So trying to shortchange the government and billing it for 80,000 was an absurd move on their part, and which the SDM and the CO should have seen.
Failure of the district authorities brought out so pithily by Mr. Vikram Singh in the fact that, these 2 lakh people, Ashok, didn't descend from the skies. There was a slow build-up, and in fact they neglected that, and the tragedy unfolded at Hathras. But there's a repetitive pattern to this. I mean, like what he said, everything that could go wrong went wrong. There was no crowd control, there was no emergency measures in place, there were no watchtowers, and yet we have these kind of incidents happening across with alarming frequency.
Well, Sandeep, for starters, we have to understand that this is not a problem which is confined to the Uttar Pradesh only. It's a pan-India problem.
Right.
In fact, at the beginning of the show, you gave us some statistics that in the last 20 years, we have had numerous such incidents where people have lost their lives in stampedes. Now, the worst stampede that comes to my mind, or the earliest of independent India, is the stampede of 1954 at the Kumbh Mela in Prayagraj, where over 800 people lost their lives. Subsequently, in 2008, at Mandar Devi Temple in Satara district, over 340 people again died in a stampede because the devotees were breaking coconuts on the steps, and which caused the steps to become slippery, and the devotees slipped on those steps and died. Then subsequently again, more recently, there have been few other instances in Datia district of Madhya Pradesh. Then we have also had incidents at Vaishnav Devi temple at Jammu. So we have to figure out that, look, this is not a problem which is localized, it's a pan-India problem. We also have to understand that there can be no way where we can stop these religious congregations, for the simple reason that as far as religion is concerned, it is almost like opium for the masses, and they will gather wherever these self-styled godmen.
Yeah, absolutely. It's
or
a matter of faith. You can't
it's
do
a
anything
matter
about
of
it,
faith.
Ashok.
So-
but it's best that the local authorities then handle the situation on the ground as best as they can with laid down SOPs. In fact, I want to bring in Major General Datta, who was with the NDMA. General Datta, you've traveled across the country for over a decade, trying to bring in this awareness of disaster preparedness among the local authorities. What is it that the one common thread that you see in all of these stampedes across the country, where SOPs are not followed? We get, as Mr. Vikram Singh mentioned, we get the MSc examinations right, but we fail at the second standard examination. You get the Kumbh Mela right, but then all these little gatherings across the country, we see something like Hathras happening. Absolutely unforgivable.
Yeah, Sandeep, you're very correct. I would just like to share with you that in my 13 years with the NDMA, we put in place the entire protocol for disaster response for all kind of disasters, whether it is an earthquake, tsunami, cyclone, or an event of mass public gathering.
Yes.
Now, we call this an event of mass public gathering. There are certain events of mass public gathering which are known earlier, like when is the Ardh Kumbh, when is the Kumbh Mela going to happen, when is the Amarnath Yatra going to start, when is the Char Dham Yatra going to start. So all these events which are predetermined, the entire state government and the district administration is sensitized, and there are very detailed instructions by the National Disaster Management Authority on the protocol to be followed and the role and responsibility of every stakeholder who is responsible for the conduct of that event. Now, whether that event is going to be one day or it is going to be running over a month and a half or 2 months, all these protocols are put in place. There's something called the incident response system,
Yes.
which has been mandated for every state government, where the chief secretary of the state is the responsible officer, where the DC of our district is the responsible officer. There are incident commanders, they are operational in charge, they are planning, they are logistic people, they are nominated. So whenever there is an event or mass public gathering, when a request comes from any organization that an event is going to take place in a particular district, the DC of the district, the SP of the district, or even at the state level, everybody gets involved. The entire protocol is gone through. The route in, the route out, the arrival at the railway station, the arrival of the buses which are going to come from interstate, the people who are going to come by private vehicles or the taxis, separate arrangements are made for parking, and thereafter there is a route in and a route out. And even in the route in and the route out, there are intermediate holding areas to regulate the traffic which is going to go to the end point. If you find that the traffic and the number of people who are gone are too much and beyond control, they are stopped in between.
Right.
So that at the point, the things don't go out of control.
Right, absolutely.
So it is called
Yes.
the
So
arrival
you
holding area,
yes.
intermediate holding area, then there are route in and route out. Then there are instructions of guidelines for communication, wireless communication, PA
Yes.
system to tell the crowd what to do and what not to do.
Absolutely.
Not
So
to panic.
everything is written down. All the SOPs are there. There are even drills done. And all 800 districts of India, I'm sure, are aware of all of this. But yet you have incidents like Hathras happening. Mr. Singh, what really needs to be done to make the local administration accountable? Do you think they should be held guilty of causing, this kind of a mass murder, if you can call it that? How do you enforce accountability in situations like this, where large numbers of people die because, SOPs weren't followed?
Nothing like this happened. I would say I'm appalled. You really have to try very hard to have something like this at your hands. It's an administrative shame, and obviously there should be consequences for the district magistrate as also for the superintendent of police. Harsh words, but you really have to be cruel to be kind, because if you do not take action now, you'd be quoting the recipe of disaster and inviting another tragedy like this. You cannot be complacent like that. And complacency is something like cascades. It begins at the topmost level and goes down to the lowest level. I know it is very sultry. I know it's raining. I know it's very uncomfortable. But that is what all of us are paid for, to be there on the spot with umbrellas and raincoats, and jolly well be there and ensured in this all dispersal. Your presence has to be there at the spot itself.
Absolutely.
We do not require
Very.
soft
It doesn't require rocket science and Mr. Vikram Singh, calling a spade, Ashok. It's no rocket science, right? This is exactly what you need to do. You need to make the people, the local authorities, the SP and the DM, for instance, accountable for their failures. And in this case, it's very clear it's been a failure at these two very critical, the local administration and the local police authorities were complicit in this, unwillingly complicit in this kind of a tragedy. But you think anything is going to come out of this? There is an inquiry that's been ordered.
Well, what I believe is that now this is an incident that has happened and it's shaken the state government and the district administration out of its slumber. So what I believe is that there will be some sort of a guidelines which will be framed to be followed across all the districts, not only just in Uttar Pradesh, but across the country. Also, once the Supreme Court steps in, that there have to be a uniform standard operating procedure for gatherings above a certain number of people who gather. So firstly, what I believe is what is necessary is to figure out that the cost of police bandobast has to be recovered, and that is being done, has to be recovered from the people who are staging the event. Number two, what is critically and very important as far as the district administration is concerned, and that it should ensure that there is a proper exit and entry passage. There is some provision for drinking water, toilets. There is some provision for a fire tender being close by. Then there has to be a provision for medical attention, because in case of an emergency, in a situation where lakhs of people have gathered, if medical attention is required, it has to be given to them at the spot. Now, what we see at the Hathras incident, that all these things were lacking. They were not followed, and as Mr. Vikram Singh rightly pointed out, that the buck has to stop.
The buck has to stop, and in fact, there has to be exemplary punishment at both of these tables that Mr. Vikram Singh mentioned. The SP and the district magistrate who were lax, and their laxity led to this horrific incident and the loss of lives that we saw in Hathras. But thank you very much for joining us.